Hi, I'm Munawar Hafiz. Welcome to this talk. So we're in that part of the conference where there are not many parallel tracks going. So I checked the program. There are apparently 2 parallel tracks going for this time slot, like this one and the other one. So I'm a little bit disappointed about. So I expected a few more people here, but I'm the guy who's talking or who will be talking for 1 hour, so I can understand that I may be coming in between you and your networking break. But anyway, so I'll be talking about some stories, about some wild things in supply chain security. And what we have been working in this area as a company, we have been working in this area for the past few years, and we have been identifying some pain points that all of us are recognizing and working towards, but then we also talk about some of the hidden fears that are there that are not necessarily visible yet, and what could they be, and what are the things that we are doing right now and what we'll be doing in future. That's some of the stuff that I want to capture. So one of the things is that we have all realized that most of our software isn't ours. We build on tons of open source code, and we therefore transitively consume the risk that is coming from all the open source code that is underneath us. Okay. Yeah, so I was using PDFs, and that might create some transitional issues, but I'll go ahead with that. So we all understand this as well. These are very boring slides. We all know that there's like 74% of code bases, they harbor high risk open source vulnerabilities. It's all around us, it's problematic, and it's hardly exciting. So what I wanted to do is I just want to follow the fad and wanted to get a cool representation of what is the problem that open source gives us. So I asked, went through several repetitions. This is something that most of the presenters have been doing these days. Like all of us have become our new graphic artists, where we just have some access to some Sora, Gemini, whatever, and we try to build images. These are great because we hold the copyright, so we can share those and so on. But I was trying to understand, so what the open source supply chain dependency looks like. So I was prompting the AI that I'm interested in open source dependencies and the risk that the open source dependencies, they create a backdoor for us and risks come. So this is the image that I got. Any comments on what could be problematic here? It just tells you, number one, that AI is great, but it does not necessarily capture what you want all the time. For example, here, instead of the back door, it looks like a front door, but yeah, it's coming from the back. I get that. At the same time, there's the dependencies. They're just on the wall, and the open source is there. So it captures the thought, but that's just something that I wanted to show, because the open source code so the AI fad is going around us, and I just wanted to douse in that. So let me tell a little bit about myself. I've been working in academia and the industry, and now in a startup life, working on supply chain security and software static analysis to find bugs in your code. I've been working, so I've worked at Coverity, which is the leading bug detection company, where I led a team that released the first commercial vulnerability detection tool for JavaScript and Android. And before that, in the academia, I've looked into automated tools for detecting bugs in software. What all of those bring in software supply chain security is we see that the supply chain security has become a very reactive process, where we deal with bugs that are there in our dependencies, and there's a whole lot of them, and it's a matter of connecting with those supply chain bugs and trying to find out like what can we do about this. So here are the three wild things that we have been identifying in the supply chain risk management area. And this is what I'm going to talk about in the rest of the presentation. So the first one is the reactive nature of the software composition analysis tools. So all of these slides were interactive, so that kind of like so I had some things planned, but it's apparently not going to work out at this particular point because it's a flat slide. So the software composition analysis tools, they are very reactive. So when you see a bug discovered here, so there's a CVE that gets issued. So the bug gets reported to the maintainer fixes the bug, a CVE gets issued. At that point, the software composition analysis tools pick up the signal. But what is interesting is the actual bug might have happened a long time ago. And in cases for bugs, this long time can mean a really long time. So I wanted to like test you, but I mean, the results are already here in this case. So in who understand or who can recognize what the left, like there's a icon for that vulnerability that was in 2014, like anybody remembers that? Heartbleed, yes. So but Heartbleed was actually there in the code for about 2 years before it got discovered. Same, the second one, text for shell, that was in the source code for about 4 years before it got discovered. In case of log4shell, the actual vulnerability was a feature that was introduced in 2013 and then reported in 2021 only because somebody in Alibaba find out that there's been an active exploitation going on for that thing. And then there's Windows print daemon, which has been there for a long time. And it was like identified, it was there in the source code since 1996. It was eventually fixed in 2020. So about 24 years, it was there in your source code. So for the log4shell, specifically, we don't know how many times or whether the vulnerability was exploited in those 8 years, what the bug was latent in the source code. So that's the main problem, that the actual bug that we are worried about right now, that's the bug that has already happened. We know about it. Yes, we have to deal with it, but there may be also a lot of latent stuff that is going on in your code that has been there. So what if we have an approach where we proactively look in your supply chain and look for those vulnerabilities in those supply chain artifacts in the first place? And some of these bugs that we find, they become vulnerabilities. And then eventually the SCA tools pick up the signals. But the time that we gain between here and there could be years, because like if you go ahead and proactively look for the vulnerabilities. But then the question is, how do we look for that? As an industry, we struggle looking for bugs in our proprietary code with static analysis tools or dynamic analysis tools in the first place. And now we're talking about 1,000 dependencies underneath as well. So that's something that we wanted to do. It was an ambitious project that we wanted to do. And this is where Alpha Omega came, and they funded us to look into the top projects. And we looked into the top 2,000 Python projects and their dependencies, and try to find whatever we can find there. So here's a scorecard of that bug finding activity. So in about 2,000 projects in PyPI, the top 2,000 projects, this is based on the number of downloads from the PyPI repository in the last 1 year. Top 2,000 projects and their dependencies, there's about 14,000 of them. We identified about 350 bugs, about 150 security bugs, 55 of them high severity security bugs. And then all the bugs that we have reported, right now, I think about 65% have been fixed. So it's an ongoing process and so on. What also we have done is we have demonstrated the capability that we can not only look at your supply chain dependencies and find previously undiscovered bugs, but we can do that at scale as well. Right now, we can scan about 1,500 packages and provide you a data feed about previously undetected bugs in your supply chain dependencies at scale. So there's been some previous work that's done on doing these bug finding in your supply chain dependencies or in open source code in general and reporting at scale. But most of them like had a similar approach where there's a single kind of bug that is applicable to many different kinds of applications that is there in many applications. And you can find that single bug and look for instances of that in GitHub, find that, and then report everywhere what we call a bulk pull request that you generate everywhere and ask everybody to fix that. So in 2019 to 2021, my friend Jonathan Lechu, who is around here, he did some basically this bulk pull request generation, and he had some few campaigns about reporting this to many GitHub repositories, and then fixed a few fixed the same instance of that bug across the community, or attempted to do that. In 2022, the researchers from Trellis took it to a different level. They attempted to create 61,000 patches to fix a CVE that was from 2007, by the way, but still not fixed in 2022. And it created a lot of press and so on. But it also created a lot of anger from the maintainers. So from the maintainers' perspective, this is very real. This is an image that I am stealing from Vincent Dannon's presentation that he has done on VEX and stuff, where there's a fundamental disconnect between the security researchers and the open source maintainers, where the open source maintainers get overwhelmed by the lack of empathy from security researchers, because they just like report a bug and they go away, and not necessarily all the time understand the context under which the bug applies, and therefore the bug may not be real. But this just creates a lot of work, and the poor open source maintainer, they get the love that is coming from open source from the security researchers doesn't necessarily translate to the other side. And that's very real. I hear about these things a lot when I speak with open source maintainers. So what we wanted to do is remove from that and try to do something that is more humane and work for both sides. So one of the things was like coming from not a handle that is not human, but coming from an actual, so the reporting is done from an actual human handle, and that human handle is also there for back and forth communication after the bug. So just reporting there and going away, that's the classic drive-by PR. And that's not something that works. So one of the things that we have done is while we are reporting the bugs and finding new bugs, we are also working with the maintainers very closely in order to fix the problem and help them even write the exploit code to demonstrate the realism that the bug is real and it's impactful, to create fixes with them, for them, on their behalf. So all of this created that high adoption rate that I was mentioning. That's about like all the bugs that we have reported, about 65% of them already been fixed and counting. So here's an example of a path manipulation in OpenMSS. In this case, we created a patch and and this was accepted. This is a sensitive data leak in Anaconda. Again, I think in this case they created the patch, but again, like we had back and forth communications with them. This is a cross-site scripting that was averted in Red Hat's code. There's a data race in Kubernetes code. What is interesting here is there's a lot of bugs. There's no point going through each one of the bugs. But what is interesting here is to look at the overall aspects. Like one of the questions that we have is, did we find more interesting bugs compared to other solutions? Like if we had applied others, and why aren't others also applying this technology and looking for bugs in your like hundreds or thousands of your supply chain dependencies. One problem is the static analysis tools. They have been very like they're full of false positives. So their reports are full of false positives. So because of that, you struggle when you are consuming the static analysis report, even for your proprietary tool. Now multiply that by 1,000 for your 1,000 dependencies. It just becomes untenable for people to look for bugs using static analysis tools. So here's an example of that. So we looked into Kubernetes. Everybody knows Kubernetes. We compared like 5 different static analysis tools. We wanted to find out what our approach, which is ICR, intelligent code repair at the top, they found what kind of bugs they find in Kubernetes, how many of them were true positive, how many of them were false positives. And also, we looked at a specific Kubernetes version, which had a seeded bug in that, like a known bug in that. So we are also interested in whether that tool finds that bug or not. And in this case, we found that like we compared it with CodeQL, SemGraph, Snyk, and Sonar Cloud. None of those tools were able to find that seeded bug there. But at the same time, they're generating tons of false positives. Like occasionally, there were like 16,244 reports, and all of them were false positives. Like doing that with like using that kind of like results for a bulk or a scalability problem, it just does not work. But what the intelligent code repair and its lack of false positives, what it allowed us is to look at these at scale, and also had time to help with the PRs, to help with creating the POC exploit codes and following the norms in general. Like one of the issues of bulk PR generation was when you submit a PR, you have to also sign, so you have to like do some sign off, and that's something that the researchers did not. A researcher who's like submitting 62,000 reports, they're not doing. And that just creates a lot of problem or a lot of noise in this particular case. So this is a slide that I stole from Michael Windsor of Alpha Omega. This was his, all of this was good. Like we were finding bugs, it's okay. But what is the impact of that? And so one of the ways that that he looked at things, or we looked at things, is like we were like a tugboat that went into the Pacific garbage patch and just found a lot of garbage and just brought in here. So we looked into top 2,000, found a bunch of bugs, big deal. How does it impact me? But the Pacific garbage patch is huge. It's like 1/5 of the size of the United States. Having a tugboat, a single tugboat like us, go and try to find any amount of garbage from there is also not going to be possible. So what can we do with that? So that's when the idea of the Project Clean Beach was formed. So the Project Clean Beach is using the metaphor that open source software, just like your public beaches, it's messy. People just come and use and abuse, misuse. So it needs some cleaning. But as an organization, as a downstream consumer, what you are interested in is not necessarily all the beaches in general, but your section of the beach. This is the supply chain dependencies that I am depending on. And can I get a good intel or get good data about known vulnerabilities? How do we mitigate those vulnerabilities, as well as unknown vulnerabilities in that set of dependencies? So the Project Clean Beach, it's a data feed that gets your software bill of materials, and it generates a risk management signal. And the signal is unique from the signal that is provided by the others from that perspective, that we provide you information about known bugs in your supply chain, as well as risk that is coming from human factors. But what we uniquely provide is the risk that is coming from previously undetected bugs in your supply chain dependencies that may come and bite you sometime, bite you or everybody else who's using that open source application in future. So we call it, so you can call it like software composition analysis plus plus. It gives you better incident response. You get benefit because you get ahead of time intel, and therefore you can react to a bug better. There's fewer bugs shipped. Like imagine you get this information and that fix of a particular vulnerability does not end up being in an application that is being released. That saves millions of dollars. There's also like code provenance that people are interested in. Where am I consuming code? It looks into these aspects as well. So one of the things that we did as a follow-up of that Pacific garbage patch exploration is now look into this from this beach perspective, this beach metaphor that we are looking. So we worked with Apache Airflow, and Apache Airflow, and it had 719 dependencies. Sorry, the top part of that is wrong. I've fixed that in the latest version, but that is not translated here. But anyway, so there's 719 dependencies in Apache Airflow. So we worked with the maintainer of Apache Airflow, and we identified risky artifacts in Apache Airflow, as well as also previously undetected bugs. So there are 16 bugs. It's not a lot. 4 high severity bugs, most of them weak cryptography related issues. They're reported using private vulnerability reporting, so that we're doing in a coordinated disclosure. And what it did, what it impacted was, and it did not take us a lot of time. Like it took us a couple of months to look into 719 dependencies and report these bugs, identify these risky artifacts. And there were some byproducts of this exploration. One of the byproducts was that we also were finding some dependencies that were not used. They're in the manifest or in the dependency list, but they're not necessarily used anymore. So it helped remove those things that helps in cleanup. But I don't want to talk more about that. There is a specific talk that is happening right after this. So it's just a teaser for that. You can learn about that more, where Michael Windsor from Alpha Omega and Jarek Potiuk from Apache Airflow, they are talking about this specific project and what did they find in general, as well as like what are the challenges that they're mitigating with and how they're dealing with the supply chain security of Apache Airflow. So that's a fascinating story which is coming next, like I think in the next hour. So that is something that you should not miss. About missing, there's this question that we also get, like, did we miss any high severity bugs? When we found, or like analyzed something and found some new bugs, how many of them are we finding? Or there's obviously like no way you can quantify false negatives, as in like how many of them are the actual bugs are out there, unless there's a benchmark. But in realistic cases, did we miss high severity bugs? And we asked that question ourselves. How can we measure that? So one way of measuring that is, even though we are looking for broad scale of bugs, we can classify them as, it also like boils down to a few CWEs that we focus on. In particular, when we do our analysis, we look into about 60 CWEs. So if we have scanned a project, we have found some bugs in that, and in future, another same bug or a vulnerability of that same CWE is reported, that means that when we scan that, we missed that particular bug. And it's a general, it's an obvious question, and we could have, and we built a tool in order for us to give a live tracker, as in how many bugs are we missing in the projects that we're already scanning. So in this case, it does not mean that there are no bugs there. What it means that since we have scanned and we have reported something, no new bugs of that kind have been found in that particular project. And we have a very proud record to show here that we missed only one high severity bug in all of those, like the previous 2000 and the Apache Airflow and the other projects that we're monitoring. And there's this one bug in 2024 it was a cross-site scripting, and we were wondering, like, why did we miss that? And apparently it was a Python project. It was getting data from a request, but it was not the request that's HTTP request. It's a custom request that they've built, which we did not identify, and therefore we were not able to follow the taint that is coming from external users. But once we provided extra meta information about that taint being coming from that HTTP request, yes, we are able to detect that as well. So that's something that we are very proud of, and I just want to show there that when we are doing the scans, we are also providing some soft assurance that it has been scanned pretty thoroughly and no new bugs of those particular kinds could be found in that software there. So now let's move on to the second wild thing, which is this reactive nature of SCA and finding bugs that have not been found. It's a great goal, but it's something that is also not an immediate threat for most of us. Like, we are submerged with already many alerts that are coming from known CVEs, and we just don't know how to deal with that. So let's look into something that drives closer to home. Yes. 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 These are new vulnerabilities, yes, or bugs. Yes.
To the speaker or those in the room, we can't hear you if you don't have a microphone. So for the speaker,
yeah, so I will
can you
repeat the question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I'll repeat the question. The question was, when we were finding unknown bugs, are these bugs that we are finding with some static analysis tools, and are these new bugs? The answer is yes. They are previously undetected bugs that were not there before, but now they have been found, and in many cases they were mitigated. But so coming back, like, what drives close to our problems is the current pain that we have, which is the lack of actionable advice of what we do when there is a bug that is found. And the second, the third problem, which is the reachability, like, there's too many stuff and too many actionable advices. What do we do to minimize that? That's going to be the third one. But now let's talk about, just in general, what kind of actionable advice we can provide from this information that's coming. So here's another report card. This is another beach cleaning exercise that we have done. Again, also from an engagement with Alpha Omega, that we looked into Jenkins, and we looked into 300 something of its dependencies. Again, we wanted to find previously undetected bugs, but we were also looking into what are the what are the CVEs that are there. How can we create actionable advice from these for these artifacts that are the dependencies of Jenkins? So specifically, as far as unknown bugs, we found 18 new high severity bugs in 12 risky and 12 risky artifacts in Jenkins that harbored those bugs. That's 2 times more high severity unknown bugs than other static analysis tools can find. We also identified 2 times more risky artifacts than other SCA tools. So whatever the SCA tools identify as risky artifacts in Jenkins, we found there's about 9 artifacts that, like, if you go ahead in Jenkins, it identifies those as risky artifacts. We found 12 more, there's 1 overlap. So we found 2 times more risky artifacts, stuff that you need to look into for current problem and future problems. And we also provide an actionable advice in following some framework that we have created, again, through our work with Alpha Omega. This is something that we call the 6 Fs, and I'm going to come, I'll be describing what those are soon. So again, coming back to the Project Twin Beach, like, we got from Jenkins, we analyzed version 2.476 of Jenkins. There were 172 artifacts. We found 61 artifacts with 88 new bugs. Of them, we are only concentrating on the 18 high severity bugs. That's what we're going to concentrate on. But there's a few medium and low severity bugs that were also there. 107 projects or artifacts were identified as clean. There's no problem that we were able to find there. 4 of them were not checked for various reasons. But what we'll concentrate on right now is the 12 artifacts with the 18 high severity bugs that we have found in them, and the effort that is needed in order to mitigate those bugs. So in order to mitigate those bugs, we are categorizing them under 6 different actions that you can take, which we call the 6 Fs. One of them is fix, which requires moderate effort. You basically upgrade to a newer version. So there is a bug that is in a direct or an indirect dependency in your supply chain, but the bug that has been found, this has already been fixed in a newer release. It's just that there were no previous CVs or etc. that was there before, so that would have prompted you from making that switch. Now that that information is available, you can do that switch for the direct dependency or the indirect dependency, and then you upgrade to a newer version. That's fixing your supply chain dependency directly. It requires moderate amount of effort, but it's not the hardest thing to do. There's another thing that you can do is flip, where that particular package has no fixes or it has become riddled with problems. So therefore, you might require moving to a different package. So find an equivalent package that provides you information, provide you similar kind of functionality, and you flip, which is more pain, but nevertheless, it gives you a way to deal with the supply chain issues. There's also, like, when there is a problem in your supply chain, but there are no fixes that are available. So in that case, you have to work with the open source maintainers to get that fix available, and then a new release is done, and then you can move to that. That's a high amount of effort that is required. This is what we call forge. You forge a relationship with the community, and you go back and contribute to the open source project. Eventually, it comes back and helps you as well. You can also do fork, like, okay, instead of going and trying to fix there, create a private fork and just hope that this gets fixed upstream later, so that you can go back to fix, which is always a desirable thing to do in the first place. You can also forget. Low or no effort is required. And in many cases, you forget because there's no options that are available. But then there are other cases where you can, like, forego and you abandon the package and build in-house and then create some detailed solutions that require a high amount of effort, but it is sometimes necessary. So essentially, these capture the different kinds of approaches that you might go ahead and do in order to fix the problems that you are encountering. So let's go back to the Jenkins, the 18 high severity bugs, and what were the different, how can we categorize them under the different approaches? So out of the 18, there were some insecure protocols, there are some data races, which are reliability bugs, not necessarily security. There's also one about insecure deserialization, there's a path traversal, some weak cryptography, and I just put some, like, 1 fire, 2 fire, these are all high severity bugs, but some of them are more severe than the others. Like the insecure deserialization, you can do remote code execution in there potentially, so that's more problematic than as compared to the others. So that's kind of a categorization of the 18 high severity bugs that are there. Now, if you're looking at the 12 risky artifacts and try to categorize on how to mitigate with those bugs, 2 of those artifacts, they are exposed in the sense that there are the bug that we have found, there is no fix in the latest version. So therefore, the forge is the option there, where like, you have to work with the open source maintainers in order to get those things fixed. There are 7 artifacts that, what is interesting is that the 7 artifacts, or about 60% of the cases of the 12, there's already a fix that has been done. in a future version, but it was not marked as CVE for whatever reason. In some cases, that code was removed, so a new feature was built, so therefore there was no need for raising a CVE. So there is already solution available. And so you can just move to that. So there's the 5 fixes. You can just move to that. And in some other cases, there's also stuff that you need to do. You have to work with the community in order to do that. But what this gives you is it gives you some advice on what you can do, as well as patches that can help you follow that particular route. So whenever we're providing you fixed information, like something that can be fixed, we're also providing you a patch or a path that you can use in order to fix that dependency, and that problem would be gone. Now, in some cases, the artifacts are archived, so you can't do really anything about that. So fixing or forking are the options there. Actually, this should be flipping and forking. That should be the action here. So here's an example of a fix. So if you have a direct dependency that is problematic, so here's an insecure protocol that we have found in org FuseSource Jansi version 1.11, and it's fixed in a new version in 2.4.1. It's already fixed. So you can just move, and this is a direct dependency, so moving from one to another is not necessarily very problematic. So you can do that upgrade, and that's an example of a fix. There's another one where it can be in your indirect dependency or in your transitive dependency that makes it harder. So here's an insecure deserialization that happens in testng version 6.8.13. That's the insecure deserialization that I was mentioning. This has been fixed in new version. Like, for example, the latest version is 7.10.2 that has this problem fixed. What is interesting is, so this comes from so this indirect dependency is coming from a direct dependency from Groovy, which has also moved on. And if you upgrade it through Groovy, you will also get the upgrade from testng. So you do that upgrade, and that particular problem should be gone for your supply chain. Here's an example of a forge where there's a path traversal that was found. The latest version also has that particular bug, so it has not been fixed. So you have to work with the maintainers. So we filed this, and then once the fix is available, you have to work with the maintainers to get that problem fixed. So these are the stuff that were about the unknown bugs in the supply chain of Jenkins. There's also the known bugs, and so there's 29 high severity bugs that have been identified in 9 artifacts of Jenkins. That's what like traditional tools like Sonatype or Endor or others, they're going to tell you. And there's only one overlap between these risky artifacts and the ones about the unknown bugs that I was describing before. But nevertheless, these also follow into these fixing paradigms, like the actionable advice paradigms, where many of them can be fixed. There's a few fork relationships, there's some fork relationships, but there's a recipe, there's some actionable advice recipe that can be taken in order to fix these particular supply chain dependency problems. What is also related, but not necessarily described here, is another problem that we encounter, which is when we are, so this comes before ingesting the open source package. Like when we have already ingested an open source package and there are problems, we're managing the risk at that particular point. But when we are about to decide upon a new open source package, is this open source package safe or not? And having those kind of data, specifically about the known bugs or even unknown bugs, that also can be useful. Like you can do some proactive assessment on whether this is a good package to consume in the first place. At the same time, there are other signals that you can take. Like there are signals from human factors about how active that project is in general about bug detection and fixing capabilities. And so one of the things that we have also done and we provide is, so this is a graph of some of the dependencies in Apache Airflow that talks about outstanding CVEs in Apache Airflow over the course of time. And what you really want to look for is something, there's like a downward slope that you want to look for. And that downward slope tells you that there's an active involvement about bug fixing that has been going on. So that gives you some assurance that in future, whenever new bugs or new CVs are going to come back, that open source package in particular is going to cover your back and help you there. So having this kind of information also allows you to visualize what is the longitudinal security effort that is going on in these projects. That gives you some assurance about whether it is okay or not risky to consume that particular artifact in the first place. And this kind of data, it can be correlated with actual activities. Like this is something that I heard from Yarek. So this is Apache Airflow. Like historically, how many CVs were remaining and how they're fixed. And clearly there's a downward trend, which is great. There is an even sharper slope when there was a new security team of Apache Airflow was formed. So it actually correlates with the real data or the real activities that is happening at the project side. So having information like this about like what has the project historically been doing about fixing vulnerabilities, that also has impact on a good impact that can provide good intel for you when you're taking decision about ingesting a new open source artifact as your supply chain dependency. So now let's look into the reachability problem, this alert fatigue that we hear about all the time, which is there's just too many open source, too many CVEs that are being reported. And the question is that CVE impacting me in the first place? Yes.
Can I ask a quick question before
Sure.
you move on to the third wild thing? There are those graphs that were showing the CVEs on a downward trend. Where is that information available? Is that a tool or a service that's provided?
So we are providing a service called the Project Clean Beach, which is a data feed that we're providing. It's available through that. So it can be accessed through our dashboard. It can be accessed through an API. But yes, we're providing a data feed that has information like this. So now let's look into this reachability problem. And so this VEX document generation. So here's a real supply chain case where Apache Kafka, this is a downstream application, it's using Log4j, and that's using Jackson data bind, which is using SnakeYAML. And SnakeYAML has a pretty colorful past regarding CVEs. So there were 8 CVEs. And oftentimes, there's a recent discussion in Apache Kafka last year in November where, okay, there's been so many SnakeYAML CVEs. Is that impacting us, or do we need to do something about it? And if you do reachability analysis, so what we did was we did some manual reachability analysis that one of the co-researchers that we're working with, who is one of the PMC members of Log4j, with him, we did a manual research, and we identified like out of the 8 CVEs of SnakeYAML, 7 reached Jackson data bind, then 0 reached Log4j, and then 0 reached Kafka. So if you have that information, that's also very valuable. If you have that information, then as Kafka, you don't necessarily need to do anything about that. Is that etched on stone? So that's the VEX what the VEX document provides you. But it does not provide you like a blank check or a total guarantee that nothing is going to happen. It just provides you that based on the evidence that is like, let's say through reachability analysis, through call graph, the part of the code that is vulnerable in SnakeYAML, your code, which is calling SnakeYAML, is just not touching that particular code. So you can be safe, or you can feel safe about using that particular thing. So that's one of the things that we are looking at right now, where we will be looking into VEX document generation and doing that thing. So looking at this process, creating these these VEX documents in each of these hops and providing that information, it's a massive decentralized effort. And let's try to characterize that particular effort. So this is Apache Solar. It has 522 dependencies. let's assume that there's one dependency per artifact. I don't have the specific number, but we have an assumption that there's about 300 CVEs in Apache Solar, in the dependencies of Apache Solar. And on average, these dependencies, there's 3 hops of dependencies. So the chain that we were showing, that there's 3 hops in that. So that means that there's 900 VEX documents that need to be created. On average, manual analysis takes time. If it takes 2 hours, which is pretty reasonable, for this is going to take 0.9 person years for just Apache Solar's dependencies. That's one project. That's impossible to scale for any enterprise level where there's like thousands of different projects. So as a consequence, there's low adoption of VEX because the VEX documents are not there. Not there in time also, because the VEX documents, they also have a timeliness factor. They are very impactful right after the CVE is there. As time goes by, people already patch, the necessity of the VEX documents go away. But when the CVE is there, there's that immediate need of whether I need to do something. At that point, the VEX document is very, it's needed. And what has been also found out that if it is done correctly, 97% of noise can be removed. So if there are 100 SCA reports, 97% of them, 97 of them are wrong. They don't necessarily reach you. You don't necessarily need to do anything about it. This is not done by us. This is done by SameGrep. I'm just quoting research from them. So there's a lot of unnecessary toil that you can remove by generating VEX documents. But it takes months to generate. It is very hard. So for the case of Apache Solar, typically the open source maintainers, they cannot do this. They just don't have the resources to do this. Apache Solar is one project where they actually tried to do it, but they failed because like they have this VEX information, but that has only been updated like twice in the last 3 years. So they started doing it, but they just did not have the effort or the tooling behind it in order to do these things at scale. So this is where we are coming in. This is some work that we are planning we're doing right now. We have some prototypes going, but we'll be doing soon, where we'll be doing this reachability analysis for your supply chain dependencies to reduce the toil and cost. This is going to eliminate a lot of the false warnings that are there. And what we are aiming for is that whenever a CV is coming out, we can generate a VEX document throughout that supply chain or throughout that chain within 72 hours. And that provides you actionable intel in order to get that pressing question. Do I need to do anything about this new CVE that has just come out? So how we are going, so we also want to integrate with the maintainers to have this thing. So right now, the delivery mechanism that we are looking at, and this may change, but the delivery mechanism that we're looking at is that we'll have some GitHub actions where whenever there's new CVE alerts that are coming from Dependabot for any of these open source projects, there'll be request that is going to this API, which is going to be provided by us for the VEX document. Once the VEX document is available, there'll be private email that will be disclosed. There'll be private emails that will be sent to the maintainers to disclose the vulnerability. And this is also something that we are exploring, like talking about a VEX document also in public. This might create problems. This might create side channel information for an attacker once a CV has come out. And once all of these thing is done, it's been mitigated, there's some embargo period that is gone. At that point, the PRs for the VEX documents are actually generated and they're available for consumption for the rest of the community. So what the API service that we're talking about that is going to do is it's going to look into your CVEs. It's going to solve one interesting but hard problem, which is this the CV, from the CVE to the root cause of the problem. Which part or which function in your code is the harbors that the root cause for that particular CVE. And when you get that information, you also can have the call graphs. In this case, we have our tool ICR, which is a static analysis tool which generates the call graphs for this anyway. So you generate the call graphs for your supply chain. Then you do a reachability analysis for each of the hops that are there. So we look into, let's say we have a supply chain of A to B to C to D. And so we look into whether it is reaching B, whether it is reaching C, and eventually whether it is reaching D. And we provide VEX documents for each steps of the way. and do that. This is something like we have initial capability of doing this thing, but we are exploring more of these things in future. So one interesting outcome of that is immediate is we looked into this particular supply chain, and when we had the tooling there, apparently like the tooling trumped over the manual analysis, even though it took time. But the tool actually proved that there's actually not 7 CVEs that are reaching Jackson data mine. Actually, there's no CVEs that is reaching there. So the tool provides you, like the manual analysis that does not scale, that's already problematic because it does not help you in your large projects. But a tool can help you think or help get you to that particular point even faster because it can find out evidence of whether something is reachable or not in the first place. So this is an immediate result that we have right now. So we are reaching the end. What are the key takeaways? There's one key takeaway, that there are wild things in your dependencies. And in order to, and this is something that is not necessarily mine. I was talking with people in the last 2 days and trying to get feedback from them about like, what do you think we should do as a community? And we need to be more proactive in finding, doing something. It's a small hill that we have to climb, and that requires some toil that would reduce further toil down the line. Like generating these VEX documents, these do not come for free. There's effort, money, that needs to be spent in order to do to get to a particular point. But once we get to a particular point, you can reduce further toil, as was shown. Like for the 8 CVEs of SnakeYAML, none of them reach Kafka. And if Kafka people do not have to do anything for that, that's a major saving in the industry. We need more data and not more dashboards. The data can be then used by you and provided. So that's why we just provide you the data. It gets integrated into your supply chain decision-making system, and you do you. Whatever is, instead of us providing you a dashboard and trying you to like fit your world into this particular dashboard's world, we just provide you the actionable intel and the data that is there, and you can go ahead and do stuff. And most importantly, bug fixing, security, this is a very human activity. Open source is a very, so be compassionate about this bug reporting thing, about this coordinating thing. Going back to your upstream and contributing to upstream. All of those upstream software that you're using, they don't come for free. There's somebody in Nebraska doing some stuff, doing a lot of effort to maintain that. And you just have to go back and be contributing to that particular community as well. I did not expect this to speak for the whole 60 minutes, but there I am. So thank you for staying with me. I'll be happy to take questions now or after. Thank you.
All right, any questions in the room? We do have one question online, but we are right up against time here. So Munawar, if you can check Discord afterwards.
I'll take Discord.
Okay,
Thank you.
and there's some really good discussion there too that you'll want to know about.
Sure, thank you.
All right.